It's week 12 and I'm back on campus. Hi everyone, welcome to the week 12 feedback video. Okay, we just got a snow squall and I'm back on snowy campus for our last week of feedback, and that's it guys. Classes are officially over, congratulations. But you guys now are working on your research proposals, and so I thought I'd do one last feedback video for you all back where it began at the start of term on campus, to just cover the last kind of course content for week 12, a few thoughts, a few ideas, hopefully some of it helpful for the research proposals, and then some more info about those final papers for the course, and then that'll be it. Okay, so as usual, mini lectures, discussion posts for week 12 went very well. Had fewer of them. I have been for the last few weeks. That's normal because most people have completed that course requirement now. So for the mini lectures, I posted my top 2 picks because there's only a few submissions this week, and very good, thank you. You can find those in the week 12 content. And then the discussion posts, my feedback is in replies to each discussion post as usual, and a great discussion all about kind of your own writing strategies, how you guys approach writing in various ways and for various things, for coursework, for writing papers and so forth. Some thoughts you have about research dissemination, how you are planning on kind of getting your research findings out into the world, both the academic world and the non-academic world. And so a great discussion board to go and have a look at, go and have a read through to give you some ideas if these are still things you're thinking about and kind of you're still figuring out how you want to proceed with that kind of research dissemination. Right, and that's what this week was all about. Was about presenting research findings once you've got them to various audiences, right? I mean, a lot of time and effort goes into producing those results, right? To figuring out how you want to collect your data, how you're gonna, once you've collected it, how you're gonna analyze it, what data you're dealing with exactly. But once you do get results, equally important, if not more important, is how then do you go out and get that information out to the people you want to hear that, you're hoping that will hear that information, right? And take it into account. And so that is, even though it's very important, it's not something we always think about, and so it's good hopefully to take a week at the end of term to kind of think that through in terms of writing up qualitative and quantitative research, as well as kind of concept and data visualization were kind of the key focuses of this week. You know, if you think about it, well, I was going to take a few minutes to kind of cover maybe some of the less conventional ways we can present results and kind of get findings out to public and academic audiences. You know, one of the course requirements I got you guys to do this term, that's now over, is the mini lectures. You can see that as one way of kind of, you know, developing your presentation skills. In this case, it was, you know, the video or even just kind of in-person presentation skills, and also just kind of trying to convey a lot of information in a small amount of time, because that's like a key theme to presenting research results. You don't usually have a whole lot of space or time to do it. Your thesis or your master's research paper or your dissertation, one of the few occasions where you actually have like a really large amount of space, many pages, to, you know, kind of discuss your research findings and answer your research questions. Most other scenarios of dissemination are not like that. And so you'll have only a few minutes to present some key results. Sometimes it can just be like a moment of an elevator pitch. Sometimes it's, you know, it's like a 10 to 15 minute presentation at a conference. And then if it's in written format, you know, journal articles, maybe you have 10,000 words if you're lucky. Sometimes you have less, right? Maybe only 10, 15 pages. And then if you're getting into things like policy briefs and social media posts for disseminating findings, you have even less space, right? Like Twitter now, X is what, 120 characters, 240 maybe, I forget if you have to pay for that now, option now or not. Instagram is a photo with a caption, right? A policy report, you do not want it to be very long, because the longer it is, the less likely your stakeholder is going to read it and cover it. So, all things to think about, and to kind of get into the habit of learning how to present things concisely in a kind of engaging and interesting manner kind of goes and grabs people's attention in the span of a few minutes. So hopefully the mini lectures were kind of starting to get you into that road or into that mode of doing presentations. Another really important, element to research dissemination is the use of examples. Now, many of you are probably sick of hearing my feedback this term with your mini lectures of, you need more examples, please provide an example. Some of you did in many of your lectures, which was great. Examples are a great way to kind of illustrate what you're trying to convey. And so, maybe you're trying to develop some kind of complex concept with your policymakers or with your community leaders. And, they're not really experts, and so maybe they're not getting it. But with a nice, clear, concise example that's practical and meaningful to them, that they can connect with, suddenly what you're trying to kind of convey becomes real for them. It kind of leaps out of the page or leaps out of the presentation and kind of really gets them more involved. And so the use of examples in any kind of format, right? Social media, policy briefs, journal articles, conference presentations, course papers, the use of examples is really important. And so use those as often as you can. Whenever you're trying to kind of make an argument or say something or define a new concept, take a step back, give an example, right? It's a good little philosophy to have in life so that people can actually understand what you're trying to tell them. I've been at research dissemination for quite a while now. For about 15 years or so. It's kind of when I really started it. As a grad student and emerging scholar, I focus more on journal articles. That made sense for me because I wanted to become a professor, and that's kind of key, developing your CV as a professor as well. And that was a typical way to kind of get stats findings out into the academic world, kind of make a name for yourself. It's also usually free, which helped for me. And then since then, I've published a few books, some edited volumes, some monographs, some co-authored monographs. And so that's another kind of bit of a different way to get research findings out there. You have to think much more in terms of general public. So a lot less jargon, a lot more kind of fun examples, data visuals, concept visuals to help. I also do quite a bit of social media stuff now. So I'm on a few platforms, and I'm currently the director of the Institute for Religion and Culture and Societal Futures here at University of Waterloo and joint with St. Jerome's. And for that institute, I actually do quite a bit of social media stuff. And that is kind of reporting key things, key information, just one little information bite at a time in a social media format. So for the social media, I use lots of data and concept visuals, lots of images, lots of examples, things that are kind of more fun and engaging and that can convey an idea, an argument, or a finding in a very short amount of space and time for people who might be interested. And then you can always provide more information later if they're really interested and get a hold of you, right? I don't write policy reports that much. I have written a couple. It's not really my thing. I have had government officials approach me about religious diversity in the past. However, I haven't really liked the government's approach to religious diversity. In this case, it was Quebec's when they're developing Bill 21. I didn't really agree with it, and I kind of saw where they're going with it, so I basically declined to help them develop that policy because it's an awful bill, and some of us are fighting against it. So there's that. You got to always think about policymakers are not always going in the direction you want them to go. And that becomes a decision you have to make as a researcher, right? For all our attempts at being neutral, when we see bad policy, we do have to act, especially if those policymakers are trying to use our data to justify their bad policy. And so, sometimes you have to say no, or actually write against a specific policy in a report. So that has happened to me a couple of times. I do a lot of podcasts as well. That's another form of research dissemination. That's quite popular at the moment. Podcasts kind of replace radio as a key way to convey information, like a kind of half-hour to hour-long podcast interview. I don't actually run my own podcast. That'd be a lot too much work for me. But I often kind of do a guest appearance on other people's podcasts. I did one over the summer. I did a series with Humanist Canada about the history and realities of non-belief and non-religion in Canada. I've done some with some faith groups over the years, and then just some academic podcasts. There's quite a few out there. And so that's fun. And again, a different type of research format, research dissemination. So again, need lots of fun examples. Can't use data visuals in podcasts because it's all kind of verbal presentation. But the advantage of the podcast is you can usually have your notes in front of you while you're talking, rather than say if you get interviewed on TV, which I also did recently and a few times before, where you have to kind of remember everything on the fly and make sure you don't say anything stupid within a few minutes time span. I've done live radio. Live radio is probably the most stressful because it's live. So you got to really make sure that you're not saying anything bad. But on the plus side with live radio, sorry, the cloud just went by. On the plus side of live radio is that they can't take you out of context. So for TV is rarely live. I usually do nowadays, it's like a Zoom interview for TV. They want, a few minutes talking about a certain subject in my area of expertise. And I mean, that I kind of always have to be careful. Each sentence I say, I have to be careful. It's kind of like, if we took this out of context, could this still work? Right? Would this sound terrible if it's taken out of context, in which case avoid it? Because often the media, those who are editing and putting together those TV interviews for the final news segment or whatever it is, will cut out most of it and will kind of take only certain segments of it. And so you have to be very careful with what you say there. And so that's an advantage of live radio, is it's live, it's very stressful, but at the same time you can kind of speak around the context whatever time you're given by the interviewer. So those are all kind of different ways. And again, I'm trying to focus here on maybe less conventional ways, because you'll see a lot about journal articles. And journal articles are very important. There's a reason why we focus on them a lot and why we typically use their structures in our coursework as well for the course assignments. But just kind of give you a sense of all the other available options to you out there. And you don't have to do everything. Like I said, this is over the span of 10, 15 years I've been doing this. That's kind of, I end up doing a bit of everything. And like, for example, I've never done a documentary before. Some of my colleagues have, like the Talking Heads documentary where, they interview you on a topic. And so, all things to kind of keep in mind, different possibilities. A lot of them don't cost you anything, which is great, but they also don't pay you for it either, like most of the media engagements I'm involved with. So you have to kind of decide how much you're able to do, right? Don't try and do it all. It's always too much. I have colleagues who dedicate themselves just to kind of public knowledge dissemination. And so we call that like public sociology or public legal studies. And I mean, for them, it's like almost a full-time thing. Somehow they manage to do it while teaching, but the research definitely takes a hit because they give a lot more time with all these various public engagements rather than doing more kind of empirical research, data collection and analysis. And that's a choice you can make, right? So if that's something that interests you, you want to go in that direction with your career, great. But for me, I do a little bit of it, but I also quickly get annoyed with it. Sometimes some of the media experiences I've had have been good, some of them not so good. And they're not paying me anything extra. And so my real love is research. And so I'll make sure I have lots of time for that, more so than maybe more media engagements. Let's put it that way. And some of these ways of disseminating research, there's a key advantage to them, and that is you control your own message. So things like social media. Actually, for all our complaining about social media that everyone seems to want to do these days, and yes, social media has a few limitations, which I'll talk about in a moment, there is a real key advantage to it, is that you control the message. You post what you want to post on your account. And that can be really helpful, because if someone, say in a TV or radio interview, misquotes you and starts putting words into your mouth that were not there before, you can refer back to your social media. It's like, no. Look, here's what I actually meant. Here's what is actually happening. So that's a real advantage that I've found in social media when I've needed it. But just generally, I've had positive experiences with social media. I know, I recognize that not everyone does, but I've got some great followers, some great communities online. They're not massive, they're a few hundred people, but they're really engaged, and they really seem to enjoy what I do and are really engaging with the posts I'm putting up. And so that's a really pleasant feeling to kind of find an audience and kind of promote stuff with them, share stuff with them. And it kind of helps boost readership to my journal articles, to my books sometimes. So it's like all very small following, which is quite fun. I mean, listen, anytime you're a woman or a racial minority, the reality is that you've had some bad experiences on social media, especially. There can be a lot of really nasty, either in my case misogynistic, in case of racial minorities racist comments out there. I've had a bit of that, but I'm not really someone who's bothered too much by it. I mean, I guess maybe it was because I was like bullied a lot as a kid, so I have a really thick skin. I just kind of laugh it off and be like, wow, this person's pathetic. And I'll often comment online to everyone else, is like, wow, you're really pathetic, and here's the reasons why. But I don't get too much into it. But it's just a reality. Any kind of public-facing engagements you do with your research, you're going to get some pushback. And like I said, unfortunately, the realities in our society is that it's especially for women and racial minorities. I have a female colleague who's a political scientist and who does a lot of public talking about elections, both in the French and English-speaking media. And she gets a lot of nasty comments from the public, like death threats in some cases. And so, I mean, she handles it, but if I receive that level of kind of vitriol from the public, I wouldn't engage at all with them. She manages it, she deals with it like a pro, and she just kind of doesn't let it get under her skin. And that's the current reality of using it. But it's not just social media, like any kind of media engagement now, you'll get that. And from what I've understood is that's always kind of been around, but it seems to be a bit more presently than it was, say, maybe 20 years ago. But, you know, it's still a great venue to get research out. Media outlets, kind of both more traditional and more recent and more innovative, seem to like the university expert as a key person to interview. I always laugh because if you think back to the 1950s, the key expert the media persons would interview would not be necessarily the university expert, they'd be a faith leader, right? So if a disaster happened, they'd sit down with a priest or a minister of some kind and be like, okay, so why is this happening? And then the priest would get into like a metaphysical explanation or moral explanation of what was going on. That shifted in the 60s and 70s in Western cultures, and now the key person that media folks and journalists and policymakers want to interview is the university expert, right? Often a professor, but any kind of researcher, really. And so anytime something happens, the journalist usually has a list of contacts at the university to kind of reach out to and ask, well, why is this happening, right? And are expecting a scientific explanation now of why it's happening. I mean, I respect that. I recognize my privilege in that role, but I am not here to provide sound bites to a media organization either, which is often just what they're looking for, to be honest. And so I will pick and choose. I'm more likely to engage with journalists who are, I'd say, kind of, obviously more interested in my research, actually did a bit of background searching, or just kind of contact me in the last minute and expecting something within 15 minutes to put on their show. Instead, someone who's actually interested by the topic, who's done some research and then approaches me for an interview, or with some questions, that's who I'm much more interested in engaging with the media. But it's all, again, kind of you decide how much or how little of that you want to do. And I use that as a kind of support to help promote what I still consider my core writings of journal articles and books, right? And so usually I'll do more media when I have a book come out to kind of help promote the book. Or if I have a key journal article that's out, then I'll do a bit of media to talk about what's in that journal article. So, this might sound like a lot, oh my God, there's so much stuff I can do, policy reports, social media, whatever, podcasts. But in reality is they all kind of tie together often. And you make them tie together, and that's why I found is kind of the most successful way of doing it, to be honest, and that's how I've seen others succeed at it as well. So that's just some kind of thoughts for you guys, for different ways to think about how you can get your research findings out there. And again, you guys choose what's the right way for you. And that can be research findings, but it can also be, some jobs require a certain level of public engagement. So it's something I think about for those types of careers as well. And now, just to come back to another aspect of the Week 12 content, was concept and data visualizations. So hopefully the week's course content gave you lots of ideas of different types of concept and data visualizations you can use. Concept visual usually refers to if you're trying to visualize a theory, or maybe an argument before it's been tested empirically. And a data visual means you're actually visualizing results that you actually found through interviews, through stats, whatever, right? So graphs, conceptual maps, conceptual figures, that's all falls into the data visuals. And I mean, I really like visualization. I'm a visual learner, and so I will actually spend quite a bit of time on visuals, more than maybe your average professor will. Also because I use stats a lot. That's another kind of key moment where you do a lot of graphs and visuals to try and basically illustrate some kind of often more complex statistical data, illustrate in a way everyone can understand. And with those concept and data visuals, that is the ultimate goal, right? The person looks at it for a few seconds at most and can understand what you're trying to convey to them. It is a way of conveying a key idea or a key concept to often a non-expert, or even an expert, but especially a non-expert. And so if your data visual does not do that, if it's too complicated for someone off the street every day to understand, it's not a good visual. And so rework it, work it till it does. I mean, obviously there's tools within visuals to help you do that, titles, labels, but often what I see happen is people put too much into their visuals. They want to do everything, and you can never do everything with a visual. So instead, pick one idea, one result that you want to present, and present it in a nice kind of clear, engaging fashion. Those are the most effective data visuals and concept visuals I see. And I mean, they don't have to be super fancy or advanced, right? A nice bar chart can go a long way. Or maybe a more complex mind map or matrix visual, fine. But, make sure that your non-expert can still understand what you're trying to convey. And then those visuals you can use in a whole bunch of the formats that I talked about. Journal articles, books, social media, even the podcast sometimes. There'll be some images, if they're doing it on a place like YouTube at the same time as putting on other podcasts, although it's not super common. But, a lot of those formats, policy reports, visuals are a key component of that. So it's good to kind of get used to producing high quality visuals. There's lots of software out there to do it. It's whatever your preference is. Canva.com is a free version, is used by a lot. Some people like to actually pay for the more advanced version to get more options out of it. Microsoft Office is a key one where you can produce lots of visuals. There's lots of other free software out there. There's a whole bunch of software just for infographics, for example. You can also do that through Canva. And so, you kind of pick the software that suits you. Don't have to usually spend real money on it. And then learn it. There are lots of YouTube, TikTok tutorials for those various software. And then just kind of start producing your visuals. So I would like you, and there will be points for this, in your research proposal to include at least one visual. Because it's a research proposal, I'm expecting more of a concept visual, because you don't actually have results yet for your final paper. But it could be a data visual presenting some key data from the existing literature, for example. So you decide what's best. And I mean, this is the moment where you can actually have a bit of artistic creation in research, the very rare moment of, you build the visual you want, look at examples that you like online and in other work, and kind of be inspired by that. And but I do want at least one visual in your research proposals. I mentioned the course syllabus, I mentioned in the slides, and so please do that. And in a week 12 content on Learn, I've got a slide deck to kind of help you with some extra resources in producing those visuals if you're less comfortable doing it yet. And so please do use those resources to kind of create a nice, clear, concise, good quality visual for your research proposals. Sorry, I'm walking through the snow here. Luckily I wore my winter boots, but hopefully it's really pretty behind me. Okay. So I think that's pretty much all I had to say about the week 12 content. And again, I can talk about these things forever, but I won't. You guys can always come see me during office hours if you're curious about any of it or want to talk more about any of it. And a reminder now, kind of wrapping up, just giving you a sense of what's coming now. The final research papers, the research proposals due on the 13th of December. That's the Friday, the 13th, at the end of the day, the midnight of the Friday, on the 13th of December. I talked a lot about the final papers in the week 10 feedback video, so if you didn't watch that, go and watch it now. There's resources online, right? The final paper rubric, what I'm looking for in the research proposal, the different sections. I've got a whole video on that under content, course requirements for the final paper. So again, if you haven't watched any of that yet, please go and do so. Sorry, there's some weird noise coming from the creek behind me, but it's all good. I think it's just a bird. Yeah, and so go and utilize those resources. And I do have office hours up until and including on the 13th of February. And so that is, I'm recording this on the Monday after the snow squall. So we're the 2nd today of December. So I've got office hours on Tuesday the 3rd from 3 to 4 p.m. And then Friday the 6th of this week from 11 to 12. And then Tuesday of the following week, which is, I believe, the 10th. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's right. Yeah, the 10th of December from 3 to 4 p.m. And then finally on Friday the 13th from 11 to 12 p.m. My usual hybrid Zoom in-person office hours. The details are on Learn or in the course syllabus. So please do come see me, talk through anything that you're not sure about for the research proposals before they're due. I will accept the research proposals up to a week late, so a week after the 13th of February, but you do lose a point a day for each day it's submitted late, so don't submit it late because those late points deductions add up real quick. Come see me during office hours, chat through, and again, resources to help you figure out the final paper, write it up. Again, the video, I'll say it again because it's important, the video instructions for the final paper, which are under content course requirements, you'll see it there. The week 10 feedback video, I talk about the final papers in more detail, so that will be helpful to you. So go watch that video that's linked on YouTube. You can find the link under the week 10 content and learn. Yeah, and kind of just, and the other key thing, which again I mentioned week 10, is in the course syllabus, there's all those questions under each week's content on the course syllabus in italic, and those are the questions I want you to address in the research proposals, kind of addressing all the course materials and how it's relevant for your research proposal throughout this term. So go see those materials, and please do integrate them into the final paper. I'll be looking for you to apply the course content, all relevant course content, to your research proposal and each element in the research proposal. And so that's what I want, and there'll be points, lots of points specifically for that. Okay, so I guess that's it. Again, hopefully I'll see some of you at office hours before the end of term. I can't make the Christmas party on the 19th in the department, unfortunately. I'm already traveling, but I wish you a happy Christmas party for those of you who can make it, and there is one happening, so ask Rena about it if you haven't gotten the email yet. But yeah, it was a wonderful term. I had a great time, loved reading your various discussion posts, watching your mini lectures, reading your various work and the critical analysis, for example. I'm really excited to read your research proposals. I love new research. This is my thing, so I'm really pumped. It's a nice way for me to end the year before the holidays. And so I look forward to reading that. Your discussion posts and mini lecture grades now are finalized, and you can see them on Learn. Under Learn grades, you'll see the final versions there. Just double check them according to your files, what you've been keeping track of this term. I double check them to make sure I got the right final grade, right? It's the average 8 for the discussion posts, and the average 8 mini lectures make up each of those portions of the final grade. Unless you got an academic accommodation, then it's less, as we discussed by email. But double check that it makes sense, and that's what you were thought, given all the grades you got throughout the term. And if ever there's any discrepancies, no worries, just shoot me an email. I'll check at my end. I've got files on this, and so don't ever be shy about that. That's what I'm here for. So email me anytime, but ideally the sooner the better if you notice a discrepancy there. And and I will aim to have the final papers graded hopefully by the 20th of December. Before the holidays. So hopefully you'll see all your grades for that and for the whole course posted just before the holidays, just before Christmas. If not, it'll be right after. and you'll see it first on Learn and then on Quest as well. Okay, so yeah, wonderful working with you. Hope to see many of you around the department as you guys continue with your degrees. I'm around anytime. I'm a resource, right? So please use me, especially if you're into quant methods, stats. You'll definitely, hopefully, encounter me again. I can help you out. But also just research methods in general, obviously in my substantive areas of expertise as well. But yeah, if you just want to come by, chat anytime, shoot me an email anytime. I always have office hours in future terms as well, so you can always, I'll give you the info. You're welcome to stop by. If you want to chat about anything, always happy to hang out with you guys, to see how you're doing, and to chat about research. All right, so I wish you all a very happy end of term, happy holidays, enjoy the snow. I'm going to go try skiing at the end of today and see how that goes. Yeah, and I look forward to reading your proposals. All right, bye everyone. Hey, Mr. Raccoon! How's it going? You're officially our wildlife post-credit scene. Wow, you are really used to humans. You are not bothered by me at all. I think you even tried to come up and ask for food from me before I started filming this video. But you are super cute. But I am gonna keep my distance. Hey, just woke up, looking for some fall food. Oh, okay, no, don't come towards me. All right, have a good end of term, everyone, and good holidays. Bye.